different languages, impressive, and about different aspects of Sephardic culture and literature, as well as 4 works of fiction, 1 in Ladino and 3 in Serbo-Croatian. All right, we will have him lecture in those languages as well.
Eventually.
Eventually.
And it is, of course, expected that the lecture will be in Spanish.
Si quieren.
Okay.
Perfecto.
21, 40, 22.
Okay, please.
Thank you.
Oh, did you find out?
21, 40, 22, 40.
So, English or Hebrew?
2240. Okay.
20,
2240.
2240. Okay, so there's plenty of time.
There's plenty of time, okay.
432 from Russia.
Also 2140, right?
Yeah, but it's only 21 and 40.
940.
21 and 40. Okay.
And 22.
And 22. And 22 and 40. Okay, plenty of choices. So, should I speak English or Hebrew? What was...
It was published in Hebrew, but I think pretty much everyone here is bilingual, or would you prefer English?
English is easy for me, אבל אני יכול להבין עברית גם כן.
I couldn't care less. Just tell me and I'll start.
English.
English. Okay. Okay. So that's kind of good choice because the PowerPoint presentation is in English anyways. It wasn't prepared specially for this occasion. I combined different PowerPoint presentations, but they were all in English, as you can see. So basically, we'll speak tonight about a very interesting Jewish community, the Jewish community of Morocco. So the title of the lecture is Moroccan Berbers, which can be divided religiously into pagan, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim. And Moroccan Jews, who can be divided ethnically into 2 different groups, Berbers and Sephardic Jews, and Moroccan Arabs. And then there are 2 different types of Arabs in Morocco, ethnic Arabs and cultural Arabs. What do I mean by cultural Arabs? People who were actually Arabized. Basically, they are Berbers ethnically or genetically, but within the last 1,000 years, they were highly Arabized. I'll just give you one example. I'll give you, yeah.
A Berber, what would you do? How do you define a Berber? What is
Berber is the indigenous population of northern Africa, of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. And these people, they were obviously pagan, and then later, in huge numbers, they converted to Christianity. Eventually, some of them converted to Judaism, and overwhelming majority converted to Islam with the Arab conquest of the North Africa. But they are all Berber.
Okay.
Ethnically or genetically, they are all Berber. So, I'll just give you one example of this particular term, cultural Arabs. We were in Casablanca in the Jewish Museum, and as we were driving towards the museum, our local Jewish guide was like, Morocco is the only Arab country and it's the only Muslim country in the world in which there is a Jewish museum created by the government itself. And this is because Jews and Arabs, because Arabs and Jews, Jews and Muslims in Morocco are brothers and so on. So we arrived to the museum and it says only museum on the outside. So I tell him, Rafi, where is the Jewish? And he says, are you crazy? This is Morocco. And then we entered the museum. And as soon as you enter the museum, on the inside, really you see in 4 different languages, even in Hebrew and in Arabic and in English and in French, the Museum of Jewish Heritage of Morocco, in huge letters, but not on the outside. And then the director of the museum, a lady, comes and she says, welcome to the Jewish Museum of Morocco, and this is the only Arab country in the world which has a Jewish museum created by the government. And so she gives us ideological speech, and then once she was finished, I approach her and I say, well, I'm from the Ben Gurion University in Israel, and the same way here you have Arabs and Berbers, at Ben Gurion we have Jews and Bedouins, and maybe we could organize some kind of a congress or mutual cooperation, research into multi-ethnical communities. And she looks at me and she says, the same one that gave that ideological speech, and she says, where there are Berbers? Where there are Arabs? And for a moment I was like, what she's talking about. So I say, in Israel, you know, the Arabs, Bedouins. I was thinking, basically, she was telling me that the Bedouins are Arabs, right? So I was overcautious with that thing, and she says, "Where are there Arabs in Morocco?" So I look at her, and she says, "In Morocco there are only two kinds of Berbers: Berbers who know they are Berber, and Berbers who think they are Arab." Right. So this obviously is over-exaggeration on her part, but being secular and schooled in French schools, she's very anti-Islamic and so on. But this is quite an issue in Morocco until this very day. So in Israel, especially if you are Ashkenazi, you look at all Moroccan Jews as one single unit. But as soon as you come to Morocco, you recognize that Moroccan Jews are divided into two separate entities, which mingle and mix, but still exist as separate entities. Berber-speaking Jews, who speak Arabic when they need to, and expulsees from Spain, who meanwhile have acquired Arabic as their mother tongue. But even that is not, that's already complicated, but that's not all the truth. Because in northern Morocco you have Sephardic communities who still speak Spanish, right? In Tangier and Tetuan and Melilla and Ceuta and Melilla still belong to Spain, politically. Geographically, they are in Northern Africa. But politically, they are part of Spain. So it's all complicated, but I hope to make some order in all that mess in next hour and a half. So, let's start.
Now that he's confused us though.
What's the numerical relationship between expats from Spain, the Jewish expats?
Today?
No.
What was it?
What was it?
What was it? Well, it's complicated, but the overwhelming majority of the Jews in the north and in the central Morocco, in urban centers, were Sephardic, were expulsees from Spain. And an overwhelming majority of Jews in southern Morocco and in rural areas of the Atlas Mountains were Berber. However, though, you know the Jews, they keep moving, so you can't take a picture. So they were Sephardic Jews who ended as to the south as Marrakesh, and they are obviously Berber Jews who came to all big urban centers. But, for example, Spain decided that all descendants of the expulsees should be given Spanish citizenship today. So how people who are coming from Morocco can prove that they are actually Sephardic Jews and not Berber Jews? Easily, by the ketubot. The Sephardic Jews of Morocco, regardless where they live, in the north, in urban centers in the central Morocco, or even in urban centers in the south, they always add in their ketubot, and he promises not to take additional wife according to the custom of Castile. Right? So, if your parents have this clausula in their ketubah, that basically means that at least the paternal side is originally from Spain. But many people, ethnicity is important when there is no money. But once you have money, money marries into money. So it was, and then also Torah marries into Torah, right? So, but let's jump for a moment to the Roman Empire. So you can basically see that the Roman Empire was trans-Mediterranean empire, but they were not extremely interested into mainland in Africa, right? So they basically conquered only the coast of the sea. So you can see that at different times what today constitutes Northern Africa was divided into different Roman units, but that's less important for us. What's important is that Berbers, which in English are called Moors, and that's where the name of Morocco itself comes from, And then interestingly enough, Morocco has a name in non-Moroccan languages. But in Moroccan itself, there is no such thing as Morocco. How do you call Morocco in Moroccan? Al-Maghrib, which means Ma'arab, the same word as. Now, being the fact that Spain was conquered by the Muslims, by Berbers and Arabs from North Africa, right? It was considered also, the Muslim Spain was considered also to be part of the Maghreb. So when Yehuda Halevi writes his famous song and he says, Libi b'mizrach, ve'anochi besof ma'arav, that basically means I'm at the end of Maghreb. Because Spain at that moment belonged politically to Maghreb. So Morocco is basically called Maghreb. But then we also speak about Maghreb countries, because Algeria is also a Maghreb country, Tunisia is also a Maghreb country, right? But in Arabic, altogether, you need then to differentiate. When you say Al-Maghreb, whether you mean West in Islamic West in non-political terms, or you mean the state of Morocco, right? So in order to make a difference, you would say Al-Maghreb al-Alawi, right? Which would mean the Alawite Maghreb, because the dynasty that rules Morocco until this very day, or today, is of Alawite origin. Now they should, again, it's complicated. You have to differentiate between the Alawites in Syria, which are a religious group within the Shiite Islam, right? And then the Alawi dynasty, who are descendants of Ali, but are Sunnis, right? So there are people who are called Alawites because they follow Ali. And there are people who are called Alawis because they are descendants of Ali. So you have descendants of Ali who are Sunnis, and you have followers of Ali who are not necessarily his descendants, who are Shiites, right? So the dynasty which presently rules Morocco is Alawi dynasty. So in Arabic, when you want to make a point that you are speaking only about Morocco, the same way you would say in Hebrew, in Arabic, Mamlaka Urduniya Hashemiyya, right? The Jordan Hashemite kingdom. So you would say the Alawite Maghreb or Alawi Maghreb would basically mean political Morocco. Now, the name Berber derives from an ancient Egyptian language term meaning outlander or variations thereof. The exonym was later adopted by the Greeks with a similar connotation. When Greeks say Berber, barbarian, that means somebody outside of their civilization. Now, Berbers, they don't call themselves Berbers in their own language, right? That's the name imposed on them from the outside. They don't call themselves Berbers. It's to what the thing would be. Let's imagine, there are places where we are called kikes, right? So, but let's imagine that we adopt the term also and start calling ourselves that way. It doesn't work. So Berbers in Berber language call themselves Amazigh. And that basically means a free man. Their term for themselves, which is Amazigh, means free man. Right? Okay. According to Leo Africanus, Amazigh meant free man, though this has been disputed. But that's what they say today. That's the way they understand their own name in their own language. Okay. Now, what is important to know, and usually people, we in Israel do not know enough about different Christian denominations, and certainly not about Christian denominations that ceased to exist. But what's important to know about Moroccan Christianity is that at the time when there were Roman persecutions of Christians, many a time local governors were not really into genocide that they were commanded to conduct from Rome. So they would satisfy themselves only if the representatives of Berber Christians would burn their books or give their Christian books for burning, and if they would, just like in the book of Maccabees, if they would act as if they participated in pagan rituals. Now, once the Christianity became formal religion of the Roman Empire, first allowed religion, legal religion, and later the state religion of the Roman state, there was a question how to deal with those Christian bishops who actually collaborated with the Romans, acting, giving the books for burning, and acting as if they participated in pagan rituals. The position of Rome was, being the fact that this was under coercion, right? They should confess, and they should confess to the sin and be forgiven, because Christianity is all about forgiveness and love. However, the position of the church in North Africa was all those Meshatfei Peula, all those who collaborated with pagan Rome, even if it was only on the outwards, are not allowed to be priests anymore, certainly not bishops or cardinals. So this position of the African church was deemed by Rome as heresy, because it undermined the forgiveness and ability to change, capability to change, and so on. So, being the fact that the person who created this theological position was called Donatius, they were called Donatists. Why I'm telling you all of this? Because we can see a Berber constant in North African religiosity. Berbers can change religions, but their position in religion seems to be very stable. And that's, they believe in saintly man. And if you have a smallest sin in field of theology or metaphysics, that deems you unfitting to be a Berber priest. And it doesn't matter whether Berbers are pagan or Christian or Jewish or Muslim, they are perfectionists when it comes to their religious leaders, because they want to venerate their religious leaders, but in order to venerate them, they need them to be angels, right? And this will actually create the phenomena of veneration of saints that's so typical of North African Jewry, and that's one of the things that even the Sephardic Jews, when they came to Morocco, they assimilated into the veneration of saints, veneration of Jewish saints. That's so typical of Morocco, and it's pan-Moroccan thing. All Jews of Morocco and all Muslims of Morocco, right, have the same position, and that position is basically part of the Berber heritage, which was incorporated in all different types of Judaism and Islam in Morocco. So, the number of Judaized Berbers and the percentage of North African Jews who are descendants of Berber converts cannot be ascertained, and is subject of disagreement. In any case, over the centuries, nearly all Berbers were Islamized. Still, many Jews lived amongst and in proximity to Berber communities, mostly in Morocco and in some areas of Algeria and Tunisia. According to Moroccan census of 1936, 3/4 of Morocco's 161,000 Jews were bilingual in Berber and Arabic. 3/4, right? Were bilingual in Judeo-Arabic and Berber. And another 25,000 were exclusively Berber speakers. As merchants, traders, and small artisans in the Atlas Mountains villages, Jews may have played an intermediary role between Arabs and Berbers and between different Berber tribal groupings. As is generally true in North Africa, relations between Jews and Berbers are sometimes presented in overly idealized terms. Okay. I believe I already told most of this. So, yes, sorry. This is the direction. Also, the Berbers today in Morocco, especially the educated amongst them, basically, you know how the colonialism works. French, the same way the British, the Balfour Declaration. So I have Arab Muslim friends who ask me, who are the Brits to give you anything, right? I mean, it's not theirs. But that's exactly what justifies British presence, British future presence here, because colonizing power needs to put indigenous populations one against other in order to justify its own presence as imposer of people. The same way the High Representative told when he heard about another Jewish terrorist action and another Muslim terrorist action, he says, well, the only thing I cannot understand in this country is why these Muslims and these Jews cannot act as good Christians. Okay, so to make a long story short, the French occupational power or colonizing power invested a lot of time and energy to divide the Jews and Berbers and Arabs in order to alienate the communities from each other, and they were extremely successful. You can see that Jews, even the Berber Jews who are born to Morocco and who have lived in Morocco since always, during the French rule, all of a sudden they stopped giving Hebrew names to their children, and they give French names. And that's how you have all these Jacques and all these Albert, and every Albert, when he comes to synagogue, he's Abraham, right? And every Jacques, obviously, he is, Yaakov and so on. So the Jews identified with French, and Berbers also identified with French, and then Arabs were anti-French, right? So why is this important? Because today, the people who are fighting for the rights of the Berbers are usually secular, nationalist, local nationalist Berber, and consequently, they are anti-Arab and many a time pro-Israeli also. While on the other side, people who are religious tend to neglect differences, ethnic differences between Arabs and Berbers. They'll say, who cares? You are Muslim, I'm Muslim. Who cares that your parents were Berber and my parents were Arab? Who cares? Muslim is super national, super ethnic. So Berbers are good European nationalists, good European nationalists, and as such, they are many a time quite anti-religious and anti-Arabic. So, there is a female hero of Northern Africa, and she is called Kahina. And this made many people believe that she was basically Jewish Berber leader against the Arab conquest of Northern Africa. The problem though is that Jewish sources remember her as anti-Semitic, right? But Arab sources,
Being a Jewish anti-Semite is not mutually exclusive. Yeah.
Well, no, she was not theoretical anti-Semite, as the anti-Semites amongst us we know today, but she was a very practical one, which is not that often amongst the Jews. Okay, so in any case, even to this very day, there are opposite narratives about her. Berber narratives who see her as a fighter against the Arabs, and then because of their pro-Israeli position, they also say she was Jewish and Jews, and thus just like the Kurds. The Berbers many a time have rhetoric of the Kurds. They say we were conquered by Arab nations, by Arabs. We are divided between different Arab countries today, but we are just like the Kurds in southern Turkey and in part of Iraq and in part of Syria. We are the original population, right? So there are even Jewish, mostly secular, less traditional narratives about Kahina as Jewish hero, but traditional Jewish narrative is not really buying that. Okay, so you can see her personal name is one of these variations, Daya, Dehya, Dihya. Now here you can see the Berber name. Berbers, just like the Kurds, they have had a language since always. And they all speak one same language which has different dialects. However, it was an oral language without the script. Now, the modern creators of Berber identity, even though most of the Berbers speak Arabic today, and consequently they know Arabic letters, they feel if they were to opt for the Arabic letters, this would be giving in to Arab colonization. So they invented a new script. Now today, any place you go in Morocco, things are always written either in 3 languages, Arabic, Berber, and French, or only 2 languages, Arabic and Berber, and for writing the Berber, this script is already used. But when you ask who knows this script, it's only the kids who learn in modern schools who are taught by the state this new script. But their parents and grandparents who speak Berber don't know to write it in these letters.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Where did this script come from?
Well, it was invented by the elite on base of, you can see basically that
It's phonetic? What kind of...
it's phonetic, it's quite phonetic. Nobody would invent script in 20th century without it being phonetic. Why complicate your life? I mean, why would you write knife with K? Right? So there is no need for that. So it's phonetic, it's highly phonetic.
It looks Greek.
It looks Greek because that's exactly what they want to say. They want to say we are part of the West, we are part of the indigenous pre-Islamic populations, and consequently our script is very Greek, and Greece is the cradle of the Western civilization, so why don't you love us also? That's the message.
Is there any language that's related to Berber?
No, it's complicated, but these languages. I mean, it's few dialects of one and the same language, and they are interdependent, but they are not similar to Semitic. They actually constitute what we would call a family of languages. But then it's not Semitic languages. It's not right. It's Indo-European.
It is Indo-European.
It is. It is. Okay. So I will switch because I want to. Oh, you can see Judo-Berber, Tamazic to Dait. That's the way they say Judo-Berber. Is any of several hybrid Berbers varieties traditionally spoken as a second language in Jewish communities of central and southern Morocco, and perhaps earlier in Algeria. Judo-Berber is or was a contact language. The first language of speakers was Judo-Arabic. Okay, this is the Berber flag, and these are the 7 dynasties that ruled Morocco. Now you can see that the first dynasty was Arabic, Idrisi dynasty. Then Al-Murabitun and Al-Muwahidun and Maridids, they were all Berber dynasties. And then the Wattasi, the Saadi and the Alawi of today, they are Arab. So there were 7 dynasties in Morocco, and Morocco was basically ruled by 3 different Berber dynasties. And now this is the time when the Al-Murabitun, the Al-Murabites in English, and the Al-Muwahidin, the Almohads in English, they actually took over the Muslim Spain. Muslim Spain was conquered. You know Gibraltar? Jebel Tariq. Jebel Tariq. The hill of Tariq. Tariq is the name of North African military. So it was called Jebel Tariq because Tariq was the first who crossed. I mean, the military, how do you call it? The military, whatever, officer. And basically the first conquerors of Spain were mostly Islamized Berbers with some Arabs. But the rule that was established there was by the Umayyads who survived the genocide imposed on them by another Islamic dynasty. So the survivor came to Spain and established the Arabic Spain as we know it. Later, however, the Spanish Muslims, Arabs and ex-Berber, they became too sophisticated to fight the Christians. The thing is, it was a very high culture, and they had mostly 1, 2, 3 kids, but their kids costed about $1 million, speaking in present-day money, and they were really not extremely interested in having their $1 million kid die fighting $50,000 Christian kid. So they turned to Morocco to bring in the Al-Murabitun, the Moroccan army. Now when the Moroccans, and this is the Berber army now, when they came to Spain to help Spanish Muslims, they said, well, you guys are really, you don't strike us as extremely male, so why should we fight for you? So they basically took over Muslim Spain, Al-Murabitun, right? And then the Al-Muwahidun took it over from Al-Murabitun. Now, I will maybe elaborate for a moment on these terms. Rabat, the city in Morocco, which is the capital. So Rabat basically means a castle, a tower, and it also means a fortified place of religious learning, right? So Rabita in Arabic means connection with God, just like the Hasidic Rebbes have. So Al-Murabitun would be the people who are in contact with Sufi sheikhs in those rabbats who have Rabita. You follow? Who have special connection with God. So it was a puristic religious movement. And then Al-Muwahidin comes actually from Arabic word wahad, which means one. So they felt that this Islam of Al-Murabitun was not pure enough. So they were actually advocating another religious reform. Okay, so now we have seen some of the dynasties. This is the Idrisi dynasty. This is the first dynasty that ruled Arab Muslim Morocco. And you can see Idris the first, or Idris ibn Abdullah, Ibn Abdallah, was the first Arab ruler and the founder of the Idrisi dynasty, but he ruled only for 3 years. Okay? He's credited with founding the dynasty that was instrumental in the early Islamization of Morocco. He was the great grandson of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. And the present dynasty is also believed to be of descendants of Muhammad. So this is, for example, the city of Fez, and you can see that main object in the city of Fez is the tomb of Idris the First. So now I'm just showing you, this is the first dynasty and this is the present dynasty. They have been ruling Morocco as sultans from 1666 to 1957, and then they proceeded ruling till present under a different title. They are not sultans anymore, but rather kings. So, originally the Moroccan star was 6-point star, but now it had 5 points, and they believe that these 5 represent 5 pillars of Islam. 5 pillars of Islam, that's the way it's called. Okay, now I want to concentrate a bit on the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. There were like 600,000 Jews, approximately, in Spain by the end of the 14th century. So Spain was not just another community. Spain was the heart and the mind of the Jewish people, because every other communities, if they were extremely big, they would have 50,000 people, 100,000 people. When Rashi wrote his famous commentary on Talmud, right, someplace here between France and Germany, his community had 1,000 people. So 1,000 people in one of those cities, and maybe there were 10,000 Jews or 15,000 Jews in all of the area. And then there were 600,000 Jews in Spain. So it was the heart and the mind of the Jewish people. Even people, first of all, everybody was looking up to Spain, and everybody was following decisions made in Spain, fashions created in Spain, right? Like secular poetry and that kind of stuff. So the question is, once the heart and the mind of the nation were attacked, because we know how it functions. Let's say that Jews in Albania, that tomorrow morning you read in the newspapers that the synagogue was devastated, few Jews were killed, and the rest of the Jews were kicked out. This is not going to destroy your world. You'll feel sorry. If you are rich, you will offer a check, right? And you will be depressed for 2 days. But you wouldn't commit a suicide, you wouldn't convert to another religion, you wouldn't come to the conclusion that there is no God. So the persecutions of Jews all over Europe in different communities were that kind of stuff. Like if you will learn tomorrow about Jews of Albania. But when the Jews of Spain were kicked out of Spain, this was a major event which is comparable only to Holocaust in our own time. For during the entire 16th century, all of the Jewish world was basically asking the same question. Where was God in Berber Sephardic? It was a major question of Jewish theology, metaphysics, everything. But now I want to elaborate on that gradually, how it came about. There were 600,000 Jews in 1391 approximately. The crown was not interested in converting them. The church and the high clergy was not interested in converting them, because Jews played a significant role of middlemen between the Muslim world and Christian world, and also there were money lenders and creditors and bankers at the time, and all these jobs were forbidden for Christians. So there were a necessity of Christian society. What happened is that populism, just like today, some popular monks against the church and against the state organized the mob, and this was synchronized, and there was no MI5, there was no MI6, so the Spanish crown didn't really know what was going on. But these people synchronized amongst themselves, and they started riots against the Jews at the same time. And then 200,000 Jews were converted in riots which lasted for a few weeks only. The central authority was re-established, but there was a problem. Once a Christian, always a Christian. Once a Jew, always a Jew. What does that mean? According to canonic law, the baptism is not a willing act in Roman Catholicism. The proof for the claim is that you baptize babies. Nobody ever asked a baby, dear baby, how do you feel about being baptized? Would you really like to be a committed Roman Catholic Christian? And then that baby, which was unwillingly baptized, later is expected to act as good Christians. And if it doesn't, it will be punished for heresy. But no baby was allowed to say, in Middle Ages in Europe, was allowed to say, well, nobody ever asked me whether I want to be Catholic, maybe I don't. Maybe I feel Anglican today. So the same thing basically happened with the Jews. The church was stuck with theoretical halakhical problem that now these Jews were Christians. And the church, even though they were baptized against their will, the church needs to make sure they will stay good Christians. Now, the next year, 1392, the Inquisition was established. The Inquisition was established basically in order to make sure that these Jews really converted to Christianity. For 100 years, most of the Jews stayed attached to Judaism on different levels. So in 1492, when the Christians kick out the last Muslims from Granada, their military presence, they want to unify the country. And they had a problem of 200,000 Jewish converts who were not really Christian. Some were, many were not. Others were how would you call it? Bi-religious? And so they actually came to recognition that until they kick the 400,000 rabbinical Jews, the converted Jews will never really convert to Christianity. Why? Because let's say that this is a Jewish quarter, right? And let's say that I live next to the Christian quarter, and let's say that you are my brother and you live here. So when the Christian mob enters the quarter, they baptize me and my family, but you are still my brother. If I turn to you and I say, listen, I need tefillin, you'll provide me. If I say, listen, I need matzot, tell me when is Yom Kippur. Obviously, Jews were giving their converso brethren the infrastructure and information on observing Judaism. And there were rabbis who were actually teaching the converso community. So the Christian crown decides to kick out the 400,000 remaining rabbinical Jews in order to make sure that other Jews will assimilate. So basically they gave them 3 months and they told them 3 months from now, no Jews are allowed in Spain. So either convert or leave before that. So additional 200,000 Jews converted. And 200,000 Jews left. So basically 1/3. You remember how they say Hamushim Yaseu Bnei Israel b'Mitzrayim? And then the classic commentators say 1/5. 1/5. So here is 1/3 left. 2 Jews stayed. Right? So then Christians passed the laws pureza de sangre, the purity of blood. Which meant, why do you think Christians in Spain until this very day have 2 names, 2 second names? And even and they are not extremely feminist society, I should rather say, traditionally. And still, when a lady gets married, she doesn't change into her husband's second name. So let's say that my mother is Gonzalez. Let's say that my mother is Gonzalez Martinez. And let's say that my father is Perez Galdoz. So, I will take my father's paternal name, which is his first name, and that will be my second name. And I'll take my mother's paternal second name, and this will be my second name, or second family name. So every Spaniard has at least 2 personal second names who are paternal on both sides. And then let's say I get married, my wife will have her 2 paternal family names, and she will not change. And then when we have children, the children will take my paternal second name and her all of this is just to control Jewish blood. The Jews were not allowed to obtain any public positions in Spain, not teaching at universities, even not learning at universities, right? And in order to make sure that you are of old Christian stock, you would actually put your second names as a flag and say, I'm good old Christian. I'm not new Christian, Cristiano Nuevo, I'm Cristiano Viejo, the old Christian. So basically, once they kicked out the remaining rabbinical Jews, they didn't really allow the Jews to assimilate because they now passed the racial laws. So the racial laws were not invented in Nuremberg, and they were already put into motion in 16th century Spain against the Jews who converted to Christianity and who were officially, formally already Christians. And racially, you could be believing Christian, but if your grandfather was Jewish, you were not allowed public positions. So, the Jews, as you can see, left in different directions, but many Jews left to Northern Africa. Others went to the Ottoman Empire. So, now this is what happens when they arrive. First of all, I'm sorry, I don't have that map over here. But if you were to see the map of Jewish communities in Spain, it's very continental. Most of the Jews in Spain, while they lived in Spain, they actually lived deep into the mainland. Only few Jews lived in the ports. So basically that means that Iberian Jewish culture or Sephardic culture before the expulsion was not a Mediterranean culture, it was continental culture. Most overwhelming majority, more than 90% of the Jews in Spain didn't live on the seaside. However, once they were kicked from Spain, only those who stayed around the sea could perpetuate their Sephardichkeit. Because they were actually crossing the sea. This is the century in which, in 16th century, the virtual Sepharad was created as totally trans-Mediterranean culture and society. And basically, the Sephardic Jews lived all, just like in the Roman Empire, they lived all around the sea. And they were actually acting as Jewish Venice. The sea was their main street. And they were crossing that main street in all directions all the time. And Sephardic Jews spent more time traveling the sea to other Sephardic communities than traveling to the inland of Europe or inland of Middle East or inland of Asia Minor. So basically, the new identity was created of virtual Spain, virtual Sepharad. And it's totally, now, it's totally Mediterranean. Jews who moved a bit more into inland, into European inland, got Ashkenazified. Jews who moved a bit deeper into African or Middle Eastern, Asian mainland, they got Orientalized, Judeo-Arabized, right? So only people who stayed Sephardic were the people around the sea, because their mutual connections with other overseas communities were more important, more crucial, and more frequent than their relations with, okay. Now, in what happens in Morocco is interesting. Look at this. This is a synagogue in the city of Fez, and it's called Al-Fasiyin, the synagogue of people of Fez. No, that's crazy. Why would you call a synagogue in Fez the synagogue of Fez? Because other synagogues are Sephardic. So the Sephardic call the synagogue of the locals, they call it the synagogue of Fez. Right? Because their synagogues are called Castile, Aragon, and so on. So the Sephardic Jews, when they came to Spain, they were coming from a very racist society, so you can't really blame them for being a bit snobbish themselves. So, for example, they come to all kinds of Moroccan cities where there is already existent Jewish community. They create their own, and then they make a takanon, a statute of the community. And then the statute of the community says, si uno de los forasteros, if anybody of the foreigners wants to join, and the foreigners means the local Jews who have lived there since always. But they are, as far as Sephardic Jews are concerned, these people are foreigners. So this is the foreigner synagogue. This is the synagogue of the original Jews of Fez. Yes. And it's beautiful. Moroccan synagogues are one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life, and I've traveled a lot. This is Azarat Nashim. And look how beautiful it is. I mean, it's really amazing. So, this is one of the tours, and this is Rafi, our local Jewish guide. And you can see that basically even though it's called synagogue of Al-Fasiyin, it doesn't have Oriental Torah.
And that's not what
Yeah, exactly. Now look at this. This is an illustration from the Sephardic, from the one of the most famous Spanish/Iberian Jewish manuscript, the Haggadah of Sarajevo. The Haggadah of Sarajevo was produced in Barcelona in late 13th, early 14th century approximately. And this is one of the illustrations, and you can see that in the synagogue, the Sephardic Jews, just like the Ashkenazi Jews, had Torah in, how do you call it? In a velvet, yeah, okay. In the velvet me'il. Why I'm trying to find an English word. There is
Mantle.
mantle, okay. In a velvet mantle. And you can see that in Morocco, everybody does that. So in the synagogue of Al-Fasiyin, right, which is the synagogue of the Berber, of the original Jews of Morocco, they have Sifrei Torah just like the Spanish Jews. Okay, now look at this. This is the synagogue of Ibn Danan, basically. Basically, we are imposing Middle Eastern Arabic on North African Arabic also. So Ibn is the way to say son of in the Middle East, but not in North Africa. In North Africa you can say Awen. So we should not say ever Ibn Gvirol, because there is no such a thing as Ibn Gvirol. He was called Awen Jabirol. Awen Jabirol. We should not say Ibn Sina. He was called Awen Sena, and that's why they called him Avicenna,